I mean, the first thing is suddenly it's just a great tune.
The sound is amazing.
Hey, Selepri, great to be here, man. Thank you so much for having me today. I think the main thing about being a part of Rolling Stone's Culture Council or other avenues where I'm able to write and to share thoughts is I am really grateful that anyone cares what I think about anything. I think one of the things that's interesting about the time in which we live is people have, functionally speaking, infinite options for what they want to pay attention to. There's far more music than anyone could ever listen to. There's far more movies than anybody could ever watch, far more books than anybody could ever read. And so if somebody's giving you their attention, they're giving you a huge gift. I mean, really something precious. And that they're giving you at the expense of all the other things they could be doing with that time and that focus and that attention. And so I'm I'm just really grateful that somebody would care what I think, to be honest. And when I hear back from people that it was helpful, that it was useful, that it was encouraging, that it was comforting, that it did something to make their life and their situation better, that really means a lot with me.
Jed, man, it is a blessing to be here with you. Um, Man, I remember the first time I saw Rolling Stone magazine. It was such an awesome read, to see how they were talking about how music was affecting culture and affecting the population and how rock and roll music was affecting people and politics. Um, I was into people like Kurt Cobain, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Anthrax, Wu Tang, people who were writing music about what was happening in their own lives. And I remember it was just listening to their music made so much sense to me. And I wanted to be that kind of artist where you listen to my music and you not only understand what's happening in my life, but you realize that my experience helps you to process what's happening in your life. So to be here with somebody who has a connection to that Rolling Stone culture, in regard to and in ties with, my own music, it is absolutely a blessing. It is something that I am just over the moon about, man. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I am honored to count Selepri as a friend. So that's the most important thing for sure. And in truth, one of the reasons why I really consider myself deeply fortunate and deeply blessed is that most of the artists that I get to work with are people that I just genuinely like. And man, what a privilege that is. But what also is generally true, and is certainly true in the case of Selepri, is I really like your music. I think you make really cool tunes that both are fun to listen to and that have something important to say to the world. There's nothing wrong with bubblegum pop. Truly, there's not. And if you we all we all have guilty music pleasures, right? We all have bubblegum pop that we like. That's totally cool. But kind of my focus for a long time has been on music that um might say something that would help another person to take a next step in their life. And Sleppery, I know you know this, but it bears saying out loud. One of the things that I admire about you, that I respect about you, is how you've chosen to devote your life truly to helping others, to helping people who are in a tough spot. Take that next step, get to a place of freedom, get where they can build and have a better life. You and I are both from a tradition where we use the phrase life into the full. And you have devoted your life to doing that, to helping people have that full life. And so I don't just like working with an artist like Celebrity. I'm actually honored to work with you and with folks who similarly are using their talents and their platform to make this world a better place.
I think what I really enjoyed most about this process was getting the vocals down. Uh, like Jed says, working with friends makes the experience far more pleasurable. It makes the experience far more, comfortable. Because I'm blessed to have friends that are great producers and they have no problem pushing me to do the next best thing. Jed was very, Selepri, this sounds great, but let's try this. Can you push yourself to let's harmonize here? I truly believe that in the music industry, as spread out as it has become, working with great producers, if you are working with somebody who tends to do better, you as an artist tend to do better. And that was one of the real blessings in doing this project, was just to have Jed there to say, Selepri, let's shoot to do just a little bit better. And I think that is what pushed the song to the level that it reached at this point.
Oh man, technical hurdles. Well, officially, I'm not allowed to acknowledge that anything I work on ever has technical hurdles. Everything was great and exactly as it should be. But I am I'm a firm believer that, at least in creative context, most things that aren't quite what you want them to be are opportunities to discover something cool that you hadn't seen, right? And so, an example is we did the song, and then as I listened back, I felt like this is cool, but it just needs a little bit more depth. And so, Friends of Friends are a string ensemble actually in Ukraine, and I felt like Selepri wrote this incredibly cool melodic theme. Do 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 do. It's a great melody. Like, it would be really cool for a string ensemble to play that. And you know, what got me thinking about that was just like, yeah, I feel like the very beginning is not quite there yet. What if we tried something else? And we tried something else, like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. It just took the track from here to here. And in truth, those kinds of happy accidents, man, that's such a mainstay of my work and my creative process. But I think that's true for a lot of people. People that I admire, like Brian, really swear by that kind of, creative synchronicity, if you will. And I think it's really valuable. And I think creative work is always better when we let ourselves relax and let ourselves discover as we go. Let ourselves be open to inspiration. And that happened a lot here. And with the video, something that I'm super grateful for. So some things you discover as you go, and some things you have a pretty good idea what you want it to be. And then there's this great joy of getting to experience it kind of in that finished way. And the video is something where I think I had a pretty good sense of what I hoped it would be. And when it was finally, and it took us a little while because it was an involved production, when we finally got it to that point, it was like, yes, it felt really satisfying to kind of finally see and hear, through my eyes and ears, this thing that I've had in my head for a long time. That was a cool moment.
Wow. Yeah, Gene the Machine. I had no idea that Machine was even going to be a part of this process until I heard about it after the mix was finished. And I mean, I was just floored. I was blown away that, somebody of that caliber would, work in with my music, and I mean, we're talking an individual who has, a Grammy nominee career of over 3 decades. We're talking that this guy has redefined the sound of metal and rock music. Fall Out Boy, Clutch, King Crimson. He's got a huge, background in doing this work. And then, of course, to hear that he literally listens to the final mix and says this song is going to be a hit. That is an honor. That is truly an honor to hear those words for any songwriter. for any artist, coming from a producer of that caliber, and I think I credit Jed, for doing his part and doing his work in getting the song to that point where Machine could step in and go, you know what, let's tweak this, let's make it sound like this. And man, it does. It truly sounds amazing. And the video is one of those things that is just, Jed and I had talked about, there need to be angels. There need to be, how things move around, and the sentiment that we're trying to get across with the song. All of those things, were there. And it's just, it was a work in progress, that at completion, totally spoke what I was thinking, in my head when I said, this is what a suddenly moment is. And I am just super honored to have people like Gene and Jed on my side and behind my music. It makes it all wonderful and worthwhile.
There is a lot that I would want to say about Machine because he's a really impressive guy. I mean, he's worked with Ozzy and he's worked with Fall Out Boy, and he's worked with Lamb of God. He's worked with all these amazing artists, and there are so many, whether it's singles or albums or projects or whatever that he is responsible for. Where I just love those projects. I've got stuff that are my go-tos to this day. That are his work. But he is a really kind and encouraging and supportive person to work with, and that's really rare. That's really rare, and I'm super grateful for it. And we went back and forth a couple times, kind of, finalizing the audio, and he said, "Well, make this change for me, and then I'm going to make this change," and that's the normal stuff. And he sent me back the final version, and he just says, "That's a hit." And man, it made me so happy to hear that, because here's this guy that is this legendary record producer. I mean, so many records from so many big artists, and if he says it's a hit, who am I to argue, Selepri? It's a hit.
The song Suddenly actually comes from 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 17. It is where Elisha prays that God would open his servant's eyes. The situation is pretty serious. There is an army that has surrounded them. Their fear for their life. His servant is terrified. And in that moment, the song isn't about asking God to open his servant's eyes. The song is about the moment when his eyes are opened and his perspective changes and he perceives things differently. The suddenly moment speaks volumes to things that are happening in this world today. And people are afraid, and we just need to be able to have this moment. If we could change our perspective on things, we would change our perception of things. I went through some crazy stuff, back in 2017, and it opens a door to see people differently. You'd want to see law enforcement differently. You want to see, the world differently. And I had to grow into a place where I had to remember, hey, you have friends that are law enforcement. Hey, you have friends that are lawyers and judges. This is not about everybody. Sometimes it's just about a few people. The people who were the king's army that surrounded them, they didn't change. They were the same. It was the perspective and the perception of Elisha's servant that changed. Sometimes that change has to come from within us, from a connection with a source that is greater than ourselves. And we all need a suddenly moment. We all need a moment with some kind of traumatic experience or some kind of, you know, life controlling problem that gives us the opportunity to change our perception of it because we are able to change our perspective on it. And that is what this song is about. It's about the grace of God to be able to just allow me to change.
Perhaps the biggest moment of clarity, and this isn't really technical exactly, but it certainly relates back to technical matters, is this song has been on the radio in some test markets for a little while now, and it's had quite a bit of radio play. And we've gotten this really tremendous response from listeners. Right? There is no higher praise than when someone reaches out to a radio station and says, "I don't know what this song is, but I need it in my life." And that to me, that's it. It is a hit at that point, right? Because it means that the music cooks and the lyrics connect and the sound hits their ear well. And that is definitely a really cool and really clear moment of we did it.
I didn't know that the song was in a test arena. And until I started getting feedback from all these people going, "Hey man, I heard your song and I'm really glad that I heard it because it had an effect on my life. It had a positive effect on my life." My hope is that it has a positive effect on every life that it touches. And I am so blessed to have been a part of this process.
In truth, dude, I think that's such a good question. Thing number one. Thing number two, I think most people's lives are defined by moments of clarity. Um, I think most people have gone in the directions that they've gone in because they felt like they saw something clearly, if only for a moment. But it changed the course of their life, and that's certainly been true in my life. When I think back all the way to my teenage years, I can think of a dozen or so moments where um, they were moments of clarity. They were moments of like, go this way, not this way, do this, not this, be this kind of person, choose to be this kind of person as opposed to this kind of person. And I want to be clear, none of us have complete control over our lives, right? Our environments are beyond our control and other people's behavior is beyond our control and whatnot. But we do have a choice over the direction that we're trying to head in. And we do, to quote Viktor Frankl, right? We do have a choice over our attitude. That's, a fundamental thing that no one can ever take away from us. And um, knowing Selepri, the backstory of this song and knowing the experiences that you had I mean, just profound injustice and trying to figure out what do I do with that. Um, that to me is so resonant that um, everyone on earth is going to, if they've not already, they're going to experience profound injustice and profound unfairness in their own life. It will be different person to person, but I don't think anyone is ever exempt from that in their life. And few things define us more than the decisions that we make in those moments of experiencing profound injustice. Um, it's not my place to judge anyone's responses in those moments, but I think that the responses we make in those moments and as they echo through our lives, I think those responses in many ways define us. And I think the thing that I love about your song and part of what I think is really beautiful and really powerful, but also is really resonant with my own life is a decision of I am going through something objectively awful. This is bad. This is wrong. This is unfair. It is unjust. It is uncool. By any metric. I refuse, though, to let this destroy me. I refuse to let this define me. I refuse to let this be the summation of who I am and my time on planet Earth. I may not know how to live that out. I may not know how to implement that decision. I may not know where to go with it, but I do know that I am not going to let this be the last word on me. That is a lot of what I hear you saying, and it's very resonant. But I think the thing that goes along with it is I really believe whatever faith system a person is a part of, I really believe that um, when we decide to not let our misfortunes and our difficulties and our injustices be the final word in our lives, I think it unlocks something that is bigger than ourselves. My friends in the addiction recovery world would talk about reliance on a power greater than themselves. Other friends with other experiences would use different language, but it has certainly been my experience that if you refuse to be defined by the awful stuff that's been done to you, you will find support that you did not expect to be there. You will find provision where you didn't expect it to be. Um, I'm describing something mystical, right? And so it's a little bit hard to know exactly what words to use, but um, I think for anyone who listens to the song, anyone who watches the video, for anyone who is watching, this video right now, you probably have things in your life that hurt you really badly and that were unjust and wrong and so bad and they were not your fault and it's not okay that they happen. And then there's a question of, okay, but what am I going to do with it? Am I going to am I going to even consider the possibility that healing could be possible, that there could be something after this? And I know, I've worked in some tough environments. I've worked with people in prisons and in other similar places, and that's a huge ask that I don't have any right to make. So don't hear me telling anybody what to do. But if you're a person who's been through some really hard stuff, and you're like, yeah, but I don't want this to define me. I don't want this to be the last word in my life. I think A, you can make that decision, and B, in a way that is mystical and that is hard to put into words. I think that there is support beyond yourself that is available to help you to live out that decision to pursue a new path. And that your song Selepri points that out to me, and it is something that has been true in my own life.
Honestly, I just really like how the song turned out. I really like how the video turned out. My hope is that everybody who comes in contact with this song or the video finds the ability to have a suddenly moment where your perception on something changes because your perspective on that thing has changed. This song just allows you to be able to do that, is what I'm hoping. Jed, dude, this has been awesome. And I can't even tell you how thankful I am to have a friend like you and to be able to do something like this with you. I personally hope it makes it into Rolling Stone. So, hey, come on. Um,
Man, thank you so much for having me, and such a treat to be a part of this amazing song and really cool music video.
Suddenly is out on all the streaming platforms, and the video is out on YouTube. I hope that it is just a blessing to everyone, and I hope everybody enjoys it and finds something inside of it that might bring you some peace. Peace.